And so, as Jay mentioned, this is a LEX Advanced topic that we are kind of revisiting, except with some changes that have come into place. We'll cover those as well. I do have the workshop slides and resources on this wiki page. I think our voice of the chat or somebody can drop it in the chat, or you can scan the QR code. And then after this workshop, you'll get the links to these resources as well. So we're calling this workshop Rubrics Reimagined, so you can save time and boost feedback. And this is actually our 22nd LEX Advanced topic. And so today what we want to cover as part of the agenda are benefits of using rubrics. Jay will share an example of how he's using rubrics in his course, and then how you can use AI to create rubrics. We'll actually talk about the Brightspace rubrics tool, and I'll end up providing you with some rubrics tips. I always like to start by referencing back to Quality Matters, because our Learn Everywhere Zula course was designed around the Quality Matters standards. And so the standards that apply to today's topic is Standard 3.1, which is the assessments measure the achievement of the stated learning objectives or competencies, and 3.3, where specific and descriptive criteria are provided for the evaluation of the learner's work. For anyone that's may not be familiar with using rubrics and what they are, we do have this primer video that we asked you all to watch ahead of this workshop, so that's available as well. And so rubrics, how do they benefit instructors, and then how would they benefit students? And so for instructors, rubrics allow you to have some consistency the way you assess your assignments. They can also save you time in grading, allow you to give students timely feedback, because that's what they're going to need to be able to get their work done and improve going forward. And then if you look at the rubric statistics, you can actually look at those for trends and different things that might be student issues or challenges students might be having. You can refine your teaching methods by looking at those rubric stats. But rubrics also have a benefit to learners as well. With a rubric, your learners or your students can better understand what's expected of them, and the components of the assignment. What do they need to do to get a good grade? It helps them become more aware of their learning process and help them to progress. And then they can improve their work through timely and detailed feedback that you'd be providing them through these rubrics. And I'm going to stop here and turn it over to Jay, who will share some rubrics that he's using in his course.
Yes. Some things out of the way. So I've been using rubrics for a while now, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not very good at developing them. I tend to be a little develop them kind of for my own purposes and not so much for clarity for the students. And so what I've started doing is and Janice is going to go into some more details about this, but I've started using some of the generative AI tools. I've been using Anthropic's Claude a lot to help me improve my rubrics. And they're actually pretty good at doing that. And one thing they're really good at is if you give them the rough idea of a rubric that you've got and kind of the expectations you have for the assignment, and you give them your course learning outcomes or your syllabus or whatever the case may be, you can tell it to actually align those two separate ideas together to make sure that your rubric is in alignment with your course learning objectives as well. And then you can share that with the students. So I wanted to show you what this actually looks like in Brightspace, right? I'm going to show you first what it looks like on my end as the teacher, right? So I do for one of my classes, for my asynchronous class that I teach every now and then, I do a lot of blog posts, right? And when I go to grade them now, I come to the rubric I've got, and I have it break it down, and I've got all of these different expectations. And Janice is going to show you how to set this up in Brightspace. And all I need to do is go through and click. I click for each of the criteria. I just click the degree to which I think they did it, right? That's how I've got mine set up. The score they're getting for each of those little rubrics, right? And you can see here I've even got pre-written feedback, and I had the AI generate that feedback for me as well. And then I just went through and kind of made sure it actually said what I wanted it to say, right? So saved me a lot of time. And then the rubric itself saves me a lot of time because it's providing the students with all this information. So now I'm going to switch over and show you what it looks like for the students after I've graded this assignment. See, they can come back to the assignments page. They can see that they've got unread feedback. And they get, I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit so you can see kind of the larger scope of it, right? They get the breakdown of the rubric, right? They see how they did on each of these categories. And so that's already giving them feedback, right? You did really well on the description part of the assignment. You did pretty well on the analysis. You did pretty well on making these connections that I asked you to make, right? And these are all things I've asked them to do in the assignment. But down here, down at the bottom, it's a blog post, and the student just called it blog post number 1, right? So they didn't give it a good kind of catchy blog post title, right? So that, again, it's an expectation I had for the assignment, and the student didn't do it. So, you know, that's the lower scale. And then you can see here the feedback is generated as well. So what that does is saves me a lot of that repetitive feedback that many of us do when we grade writing assignments in particular, right? Because we're often saying the exact same thing over and over and over again, right? And then what that does is saves me time so that I can come back in the end, and I didn't do it here for this example student, right? But I could then give them some more precise feedback on the content, because I've given them already the feedback on everything else built into the rubric. And then you can see here, Brightspace also does this nice thing of doing an overall score with some feedback as well. So that's really how I'm using them. And it seems probably like pretty excessive, because I would have thought this is a blog post. It's not a major assignment. I have them do 8 to 10 of them over the course of the semester. So you think it'd be a pretty simple kind of grading thing. But then I've got this 15-point rubric, but it's so precise in what it's doing, and that's why it's broken down like that, right? And so the students have all of that feedback that they're getting. It's speeding up my grading, and it's also letting me concentrate on the customized feedback I'm going to give them about the content of what they said, because all this other kind of minutia is already provided for them. And I think I'm going to stop right there and hand things back to Janice.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And you all can still hear me, right?
Yep.
And you see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use AI to develop your rubrics. Hold on one. All right, and so you can use an AI tool for that initial draft of your rubric. And as Jay mentioned earlier, if you also provide it with the learning outcomes, the assignment information and whatnot, it'll do a pretty good job of developing, helping you develop that initial draft of your rubric. If you already have a rubric, you can use AI to help you revise or refine that rubric. And in looking at your rubric, you can ask it to suggest some feedback that you could provide to the students for the different levels and criteria. So it's really good at putting together that work. And so here is a concert report assignment that was being used in a music appreciation class. And this was the actual assignment instructions, where there are actually 6 points that the instructor wanted the students to cover when they reported on the particular type of concert that they went to. Some information indicating that they needed to provide some kind of artifact, like a program or a ticket, get it signed if possible, some other information about it, the different types of concert performances that students could attend, and then the total points that they could earn on this would be 20 points. And so all of this information is here for the students to be able to do this assignment, but it would be a little bit easier for the students to understand if it were in the form of a rubric that would kind of tell them which things might be more important, what they need to cover, make sure that they don't forget anything. So I asked Gemini to create a rubric, and I started out with this prompt: write an assessment rubric for the concert report assignment that's attached and identify key criteria from the assignment instructions. And you can attach documents by clicking on the plus sign, which I did. And so I uploaded the assignment instructions and then asked AI to generate that rubric for me. And I'm going to show you the results of this prompt. And so here was the prompt, and Gemini says, here's your assessment rubric. And when I looked at the results that I got, it says here that there's addressing the report points. This is the content addressing the report points. And all 6 points, the student would get 20 points for it. And then it proceeded to repeat the 6 points as criteria here in my rubric. Also, it came up with 4 levels: exceeds expectations, meets expectations, and approaching does not meet. So in looking at this, I know that this is totally wrong because these 6 points are already broken out as criteria. So I came back and said, is that content addressing report points criteria in your rubric necessary? It seems like the other, it's covered as a part of the other criteria. And then I also pointed out that this assignment was worth a total of 20 points. So I asked it to rewrite the rubric. Came back and said, yeah, you're right to point out the potential redundancy. And it revised the rubric for me. I also asked it to reminded it that the assignment was worth 20 points and asked it to assign a larger percentage of the points going to criteria that would be more important. And so I have the same 4 levels, but here in the criteria, it did a better job of breaking that criteria out and assigning the points appropriately. And I said, this looks great. Please rewrite this rubric with the same criteria, but only with 3 levels. because I was really bothered by the first level saying exceeding criteria. So I just wanted the levels to say meets expectations, needs improvement, and inadequate. And so it came back and uh, rewrote the rubric, and this is what I got. And so the thing about Gemini, as well as I would imagine um, all AIs, is that you could perhaps export that information out. So you could export this out to a Google Sheet. The problem with um, Brightspace and the Brightspace rubrics tool is that even if you exported it out into a file, there's no way to actually import that directly into Brightspace, and we'll see that in a moment. So the point of that is just to say you need to be kind of deliberate about how you're prompting to get the results that you want. In that example, you see I was going backwards and forwards trying to get at the end product, something that would be more in line with what I was looking for. And so you'll find various suggestions about how to do AI prompting. And there's one that I typically use. It's called the capture method of prompting. So make sure you tell the AI your context, be precise with what you're asking, and give it a persona. Tell it who it needs, who you are, or who it needs to pretend it is. Watch your tone and the format, request specific things, and then engage with it and follow through. So this was my original prompt, remember? And what I did also was asked Gemini, please rewrite my initial prompt using the capture method of prompting so I could get an idea of how I could have written a better prompt. And notice Gemini is suggesting you're an experienced educator specializing in music performance and academic assessment. My task is to create blah, blah, blah. And then write the rubric. The rubric must include a minimum of 4 key criteria with the levels for each criterion. Write a brief. So this prompt would have gotten me closer to something that I could have used to start with, rather than having to go backwards and forwards. So here's another prompt that I used and set it up in the capture method of prompting. And this one, you're a higher education instructor teaching an English class, English 1010 composition and rhetoric. It's an introductory course. Students will have to write an essay, and then I indicate what an exemplary essay is. The fact that the essay is worth 100 points, and it should have 5 levels. And this, I did this one with Perplexity AI. And Perplexity came back and said, certainly, here is your 5-level assessment rubric. And it did a fairly good job. 5 levels, A through F, and then the criteria here, I think it's 6 criteria with this scoring guide ending here. And I followed that up with saying, okay, providing feedback with the criterion levels within a grading rubric is going to help the students understand why they received a certain score. So please suggest some initial feedback for each level and criteria that I can provide to the students when grading their essays. And it began to give me some initial feedback for the different criteria. Because truly, if, for example, if a student got a C in the thesis and organization, they may not know how exactly to correct that. And so this feedback says, consider revising for clearer topic sentences and transitions. Like on the development and support, if the student got a C, provide some evidence. You provide some evidence, but your analysis is sometimes basic. Work on explaining how your evidence supports your thesis. So they're getting more information to help them to improve their learning. And these are just some other screenshots of the feedback that it gave me for the other criteria. So here's some tips for creating rubrics with AI. Have a clear purpose, as I mentioned before. Have some context. Start with the draft prompt, be specific. Attach materials. Refine and iterate. Consider the student and how the student experience would be, and then improve through feedback. And this information came from working with AI to create a rubric from the Center for Advancing Teaching and Learning through research at Northeastern University. And some principles for prompting. The chatbot cannot read your mind. Put some effort in your initial prompt, and that's going to reduce the need for additional interactions. Understand the capabilities and limitations of your chat box so you can optimize its use. Stay up to date with new prompt engineering techniques. And build a prompt collection. So if you have these, a prompt collection, you can always go to that, modify it for, and use it for your prompts. And then the chatbots evolve, and so should your prompts. Any questions? Comments? If not, I'd like to ask you this question. Should instructors disclose to their students when they use AI?
Sierra thinks so.
Who?
Into the chat. Sierra, she joined us. Looks like everybody's saying yes so far.
Oh, okay. Does anybody want to elaborate?
I share it with my students, and they're looking at me. I always feel awkward when I do that because they look at me awkwardly. But I think it's the right thing to do. I told my students that the quizzes that are over my chapters are generated by AI to make it quicker. And they just kind of stare at me. I don't get any response, but I feel like I should. I mean, I should say it.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
I think it's great that everybody is saying yes. For those who haven't taken a look at that, AI statements that we're passing around as a draft right now. One of the many kind of things that's in it is that students need to be held accountable if they're using AI in the classroom. In fact, should be requiring them to explain if and how they've used AI for any assignment. And the reverse is also true. Faculty should be sharing with students. So for my rubric, I need to add a statement on it that explains that how I used AI to do that, because we need to kind of establish kind of a full transparency on both ends. And part of that grew out of, just real quickly, if you remember, there was a case back in the spring where a student sued, I think it was Northwestern, because she realized that her professor was using AI to generate all of his lectures and all of his quizzes. And he wasn't even editing them. He was just kind of dumping it in there, copying and pasting, and still kind of capturing some of the identifying marks of the AI. And so then she sued the school and said she wanted her money back for that class because he hadn't done the work. So we do think full transparency. That's going to be, that's a recommendation. That's a part of that statement. It's full transparency both through students and through faculty.
Thank you. And I also think it's helpful that the students see how you're using AI, and so that they can get some ideas about how they might appropriately use AI themselves. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the Brightspace Rubrics tool at this point. And you find the Rubrics tool under Course Admin and then Rubrics. If you're going to develop a rubric to use in your course, I would suggest creating the rubric first and then attaching it to the assignment or the activity. When you get in, then you would be clicking on the blue New Rubric button. And I am actually going to get into my Brightspace course, I think. Let me find it. All right. So I am in my course. If I go to Course Admin and then Rubrics, here's the blue New Rubric button. And so if I click on New Rubric, I can create a new one. As I mentioned a moment ago, unfortunately, with the rubric tool, you cannot just import information, your rubric into this tool. You're actually going to have to go in and either type it in or copy and paste. Hopefully at some point, D2L catches up and realizes that having the ability to import some information into this tool would be helpful. But when we look at this new rubric screen, you have to indicate the type of rubric that you have, and so that you want to create. And so it defaults to analytic, and your options are analytic or holistic. And then whether or not you want to have no scoring, is it going to be points or custom points? The difference between points is that the criteria that you have here in the criteria category, if you choose points, then it's going to assign the same amount of points to every criteria. If you want custom points, the criteria are worth different points, then you can set up custom and it will allow you to easily assign different points to each criteria. I'm going to leave it at points. You have an option here to reverse the level order. So these are our levels. I can add a level in front or behind. If I need to delete one, I can delete those. And as I mentioned, when you're creating the rubric, you just need to type into the cell. Jay was mentioning initial feedback, and you saw in my AI prompting, I got the AI to give me some feedback, initial feedback that I could place in there. So I would be putting the criteria and level description here, and then the initial feedback.
Quick question.
Yes.
Alam has said, what's the difference again between analytic or holistic?
An analytic rubric, you're going to be grading, having point values for it, but holistic, you're grading it as a whole.
Gotcha.
Did I get that well enough?
Thank you.
All right.
So this one that you chose right now is analytic.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it defaults to analytic rubric. Correct. So, and when I created the new rubric, it started off saying level 4 was 4 points, 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to change this so you can see if the maximum points for the level 4 was 25, then all I would have to do is put 25 points here in the level 4. Now here, you, like I said, in here you can change any of this. Forgive me if I misspell something. Whoop, and I did. And so obviously, if this is excellent, is worth 25 points, let's say level 3 or whatever is the next one, let's say that's worth 20 points. And let's say this is worth 15. And level 1 is worth 10. But notice what's happening here. This is something new with Brightspace. When you enter the points, it realizes how many points there are between this level and the next one. And so when you're grading, even though the maximum amount of points for a criterion level would be here, you can enter any number of points between these two. So I don't know if you noticed how those values were changing. And so right now, my rubric is worth 75 total points. There's something nice here. You can add a, if I needed another criteria, I could add one. But if I needed a criteria group, in other words, a set of criteria that maybe are worth different points. So if the maximum points for this was 10, what's going to complain? I got to start at this end. Let's say 3, 5, 8. So now I have a whole nother criteria group that's worth 10 points, making my total 85. Right? So you can add these criteria groups when the criteria are going to be worth different points values. The one thing I do want to point out is that in the overall score, it starts off with whatever the default was. And so it started off by saying I had 4 levels. I'm in a level 4. And notice my point value didn't update. So for level 4, if my total point value is 85, right? For level 4, that cannot be 11 points. So you actually have to do the math to get yourself there. So if I wanted level 4, for example, to be anything that was 80 or above, then I would need to make sure that I changed that. And if this were, say, 70 and above for level 3, I'm just putting in some numbers, 60 or anything below 0. So just the point I'm trying to make is that in the overall score, the system is not going to automatically update this for you to reflect your total points. So just keep in mind that that's something that you're going to have to manually do yourself. And then in the options, you have some options. Rubric is visible to students. So when you use this rubric, can the student see it? That's the default. If for some reason you needed it to be hidden from the students, you have that option here. And then there's also one that says the rubric is hidden until feedback is published. Right? Okay. What I want to do is actually look at a rubric that I'm going to use in an example here. Let's preview this rubric. I'm assuming you all can see the rubric still, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this rubric I'm going to use to grade an oceanography current events assignment. And I have the criteria here on the left-hand side, and then my different levels, excellent, good, developing, and needs improvement. And so notice for article summary, the maximum points is 20. For oceanography concepts, it's 40, and then 25, 10, and 5 for a total of 100 points. So if I actually take a look at this rubric, I'll edit it so you can see. So for article summary, Remember I said the maximum points was 20. And then this is the description for it. But also I have some initial feedback. So I have the criteria, the description of what that particular level is, and then if I were to select this, the initial feedback that would be provided to the students. And it's the same for all the other criteria. This was the oceanography concepts, significance, implications, critical reflection, and then clarity and organization. So we'll see this rubric again here in a moment. In my assignments, I have this assignment where the rubric is attached. And to attach a rubric to your assignment, if I edit the assignment, you're going to actually be attaching the rubric over here in the evaluation and feedback accordion. So this assignment has all the assignment instructions. And so if I didn't have a rubric attached, the student could go here and look at the instructions and try to see what they needed to do to complete the assignment, but having the rubric helps them to understand better, especially where the significance of the sections and what they need to focus on. But when you are trying to attach a rubric, you go here to the evaluation and feedback accordion. When you expand it, there's an option that says add a rubric. And then for a rubric you already created, you would just do add existing and then select the rubric and then it gets attached. So this rubric is attached. And so I'm going to discard these changes because I'm not making any, but I do want to go here where I have one new assignment submission. So a student submitted an assignment, my demo student, so I could look at exactly what they submitted over here on the left. And when I want to grade it, then I'm over here on the right-hand side of this evaluation panel, and the rubric is attached here. So if I were to click here, I can expand, and then now you see, I see the rubric. So remember my criteria, article summary, oceanography concepts, and the rest of them. And so when I roll my mouse over, I actually see the different levels. So let's say the student did a pretty good job for the article summary. I want them to get the full points. And the system filled it in. It also indicated what that description of this criterion level was. And then that initial feedback shows up here. If for some reason you didn't want to give the students the entire 20 points in this case, then I could just click here and just change this. So let's say I wanted to give them 19 points instead of the 20. So I can actually change that. I get an asterisk here telling me, letting me know that I did make a change. And so let's say in oceanography concepts, not so good. So they're here. And then I have the other criteria. Something that's relatively new with grading with rubrics is this option where you can quickly grade ungraded criteria. So you see I have 3: significance and implications, critical reflections, and the clarity and organization that I've not graded yet. If I click on the 3 dots, then I can choose either set anything that's ungraded to excellent, which is my highest level, or set ungraded to needs improvement. I can also clear selections. So I will set ungraded to excellent, and it updates all of them so that the rest of them are excellent. So this would help you to quickly grade. I do want to point out here, this icon here will actually open the rubric up in a new window. So if I click this, I think you all are seeing my new window, right?
Yep.
Okay, and so I can still grade from over here. I can change any of this if I needed to change this add something to the feedback, modify it if I wanted to change a level. And when I'm done, then I can close. From this view, you can also do the set ungraded items as well. I will close this. And then when you are, so the with what I just did, the student is getting 86 out of 100. That score populates here in the overall grade. I can provide them with some overall feedback, and then I can either save the as a draft or publish. If you're working on grading multiple students' work, you might want to save them as a draft before you publish, and publish everybody's at the same time. If you publish one at a time, then that student would get notified that they have a score. And if you don't get back to grading until hours or the next day or something, one student might have their score and they're talking to their friend, and their friend says, well, I got my grade. And then you're getting a bunch of calls. Okay. I do want to, do I have any questions about any of that?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so I want to end with some effective practices and some potential pitfalls that you might run into. And so when you're attaching a rubric, you can attach it to an assignment, to a discussion, and you can also attach it to a grade item in your grade book. But if you've attached, if you're using an assignment or a discussion, then you want to attach the rubric to that assignment or to that discussion, and then you want to grade the students from that tool. You can attach a rubric to a grade item for any activities that are not associated with a tool inside of Brightspace, and then just assess it or grade it from the grade item in the grade book. New, relatively new, is the fact that you can also now attach a rubric to written response quiz questions. So you just need to make sure that the rubric total points matches the total points of the written response question. And to attach it to a written response question, when you're creating or editing that written response question, you'll see down at the bottom by the default points, the fact that you can add a rubric. So you just do add a rubric and then find the rubric that you want to attach. When the students are taking the quiz, if there's a rubric attached, then they will see it here right underneath the question, and they can click on the link and that would open up the rubric. When you're evaluating a quiz attempt that has a rubric attached, you would go into the question and then you would see the rubric right underneath the response. So you can click on this and expand it and grade the rubric, or you can open it up in a pop-out window. When the students are viewing their attempts, they will see the rubric underneath the question. And I've kind of highlighted here that a correct answer is not going to be displayed for written response type questions. So having a rubric here would actually could help the students understand why they got the score that they did. So for example, in this example, this person got 8 out of 9, and the student might have said, well, what did I do? I didn't get that last point. And so if there were a rubric attached that could clearly show them where they went wrong. And so at this level 2, they did something or another. What would be even better is if level 2 had some sort of feedback that would provide them with some additional information so they would understand where they went wrong and they could correct it going forward. So my tip number one is enter initial feedback when you're creating a rubric. It may take you longer to set the rubric up in the beginning, but it's going to be a time saver for providing that feedback when grading the student's work. Tip number two, the assignments tool has had for a while this observed in-person assignment. And so the purpose of this is you can use the assignment tool to attach a rubric to evaluate something that your students are going to be completing outside of Brightspace. So let's say they had a presentation or a demonstration or something. You can set it up as an assignment, give them the assignment instructions, and actually grade it from the assignments tool using a rubric. And this maximum or minimum for ungraded items would be a time saver. So if you have a student and you know that they got it all right, and like in Jay's example where he has the 15 criteria, you can just set all of those to the highest or the lowest, save you some time in grading. This is available for analytic type rubrics. And to keep in mind that you can open your rubric in a new window, that little pop out there. So it allows you to see the rubric in a larger window, might improve your efficiency and the visibility of the rubric. And then definitely review the rubric statistics. There's valuable information in looking at the statistics. You'd find the rubric statistics by going to the rubrics tool. When you see the rubric, there's an arrow on the right. If you click on that name and click on that arrow and choose View Statistics, in the Competency Activities tab, you'll see these action icons. If you were to click on that, that would take you in where you can actually see the statistics and the breakdown of the criteria levels and how students do. And then finally, you can, if you create rubrics in one course, you don't have to recreate it from scratch in another. You can use the import, export, and copy components tool to copy the rubrics between courses. Some potential pitfalls. You cannot associate a rubric with an assessment if it's in a draft status, so you have to publish the rubric first. You can't edit a rubric that is currently in use, but you can make a copy of it and then edit that copy. Be cautious when changing the rubric's type and/or scoring method. Sometimes when you switch, you can lose information. I also want to say that Brightspace rubrics are not the same as Turnitin rubrics. So if you're using the rubrics and Turnitin, that's a whole different rubric tool. And what we've been talking about here today are rubrics in Brightspace. I do just want to do a little quick check-in to see, are there any questions still circling around? I'll take the silence as no. All right, and then one last thing here. A give or gain. Share one helpful tip that you gained and would like to try out, or one tip you found helpful and you would like to give to others. If you're in the chat and you're typing it in the chat, just start it with give or gain. Anybody in the room have something they want to give or gain?
It's me and Mark in the room. Yeah,
Oh,
capture method for prompts is really good. Yes. And using AI, and implement the feedback feature using the existing rubric.
Okay, great.
Brightspace rubrics tool is a gain. From me, I always learn something, so it's great that I learned how to do it quickly, where you can just say, grade the rest as excellent. That's awesome.
All right, thank you for sharing that. We have any comments in the chat? No?
Oh, yeah. And Ashley mentioned that using rubrics with multiple courses or multiple faculty instructors, that helps to standardize and expedite the grading. And she would highly recommend it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. I do want to point out that we also in the LEX course have some information in our assessment and measurement module if you're wanting some additional information. And we also had our prior LEX advanced topic, which was interactive rubrics. So that information is available to you in the Learn Everywhere Zula course. And as I mentioned, the workshop recording will be available. We'll put that on the resource page as well. The link to that is catwiki.zula.edu/rubrics, or you can scan this QR code. And your attendance today in this workshop earns you the Rubrics Reimagined badge. And you will see this badge in the LEX course. And I always like to give some confetti. All right, I am going to stop sharing. Are there any last minute things?
Getting some applause and everybody's thanking you.
All right, love it.